Let's talk to Jason in Pennsylvania. Jason, welcome to the show. How can we help you today?
Well, on my last vacation, I went down to that park that they have in Kentucky and listened to what they had to say. And they have this song where they sing about little bitty fossils scattered all over the surface of the earth, and they use
I know
that
the song.
as an explanation. You know the song, okay, great. And so my argument against that is that when the continents moved, they went underwater for a while, and that's how the fossils got on there. And I was just wondering if that's the best argument that I have against something like that.
That's a bit of a misunderstanding of how it works. So the way a fossil is formed is an animal has to die and then shortly after death be buried in under mud or sediment or something that will prevent its bones from decaying. So it can sit exposed for a little bit, but eventually even the bones will decay and disappear. But if it's buried, then that stops the predators from picking it apart and stuff like that. So it's not that there doesn't have to be a lot of water. It doesn't have to be a global flood every time there's a group of animals fossilized together. It can just be it can be a normal mudslide. There's barely any water available. It's just mud. Now the way
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I think the claim is that the fossils from the ocean that are in Colorado.
Yeah, so I was just about to get to that. So the fossils from the ocean are on the mountaintops.
Yes.
Yeah. So that claim, yes. The answer to that one is tectonic activity. So it's the animals die on the seafloor, and then there's actually some really good animations about this from specifically with the Indian continental plate hitting Asia. Is as it hits it, the Indian continental plate just kind of gets subducted underneath the Asian one, and I might have it backwards, but the other one gets pushed up, and so what was on the sea floor gets pushed up to the top of the mountains as the plates are subducted like that. And it's almost like picture a dirty dish being scraped off, and it just kind of piles up on the end. That's the seafloor sediment is making the mountain like that. And where was I going? But so that's basically the response to the sea creatures on the mountaintops. But then the creationists, their view is very, very simplistic in that they'll say because there was a flood, global flood, mountains were covered, therefore sea creatures on a mountaintop. But the mechanics of how a flood work, that just doesn't work that way. When a flood comes in, the sediment washes things from the high areas to the low areas, so it'll fill in the bottom. So if there were sea creatures living around, they wouldn't be living in the sea and then get swept up to the mountaintop in a flood. It would be the other way around. Anything whatever was on top of the mountain would get swept down into the bottom of the seafloors. So there wouldn't be any fossilized sea creatures on mountaintops if there were a worldwide flood.
But the water was on the earth for a year or something. Couldn't the creatures have swum up to the top of the mountain or something like that?
Not with the creationist model, because it's so catastrophic. There are areas where there are literally tens of thousands of laminations, which are layers within the layers of the stratigraphic columns. So there's literally tens of thousands of layers. There have to be multiple layers laid down and then turned into rock or lithified every day. So with how turbulent and tumultuous this is, there's no way that they could just move up to the mountaintop and settle in and have a nice little life and then get buried again.
Okay, why not? I don't understand why I still don't understand why they can't just swim up to the mountaintop and be there, and then the water goes down and they're stuck on top of a mountain and they.
Well, it's been known since the 1600s that a lot of the animals that are buried on a lot of these marine creatures on the mountaintops are buried in positions that indicate that they were just going about life as normal. So that wouldn't be that to me. That says you don't go about life as normal during a year-long worldwide flood. That just especially not with how catastrophic it has to be. There's no calm water for them to be climbing up and just settling down and having a normal life. It's just way too catastrophic for that.
Right. I think one of the misconceptions is just like, oh, it was like filling up a swimming pool and then it was all just still for a whole year. I don't think that's, Vice, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that that's accurate if we're describing the kind of flooding that would have been required to cover mountains.
Creationists are actually on board with this. Like there's a paper that I reference frequently by Dr. John Baumgartner, who is a creationist, and he actually went and calculated how much thermal energy would have been released during the flood, and essentially, with all the energy that would have been released, the Earth today would still be a molten ball, not capable of supporting life. So his conclusion in that paper is we just have to get used to appealing to God changing the laws of physics, and that's it. So even by creationist calculations, it's not possible.
Okay, you got me on the last. That's the first time I've heard of anything like a lot of energy being released. I've heard of, their explanation of the flood was a bunch of water comes up from the earth, and of course that would be turbulent at the rate at which they say that it came up. But even after that, I was thinking, well, okay, it's turbulent in the beginning, but then you have apparently a whole year where it's not going to be turbulent.
But
so
you don't really have that year, though, because the thing is, most creationists accept the idea of Pangea, that all the continents were in one spot in the past. And they usually will say that Pangea broke up into the continents that we have today during the flood, during the year that it was underwater. And that's where the energy comes from, because the amount of energy required to move the continents that distance is it's entirely catastrophic. Like Noah wouldn't have been able to survive in his little wooden boat. It would have been vaporized. The oceans would have been vaporized. It's not possible.
Right. Okay. Now, who's the person that said that?
That was Dr. John Baumgartner. If you give me a second, I can get can tell you what the name of the paper was.
Yeah, what we can do to keep this moving along is, Viced, if you want to Google that, we'll make sure to put that in the description of the episode. And that way, anybody who watches the call can also just go down and click into that document. So we can make sure everybody gets that info. Thank you so much for calling in, though, Jason. Did that answer your question or give you some more to think about?
Can I just say I'm not exactly sure why an animal couldn't still climb or swim to the top of a mountain and then, when the waters recede, be fossilized?
Because it was way too catastrophic for them to be able to swim. Like there was no year of calm water. And you'd be hard-pressed to find a creationist that would suggest that there was a year of calm water. I do have the paper up if you want me to say the name.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah,
so it was published in the Creation Research Society Quarterly, Volume 27, December 1990. The paper itself is... Oh, sorry, I got the whole volume up here. That's the volume it's in. It's Dr. John Baumgartner, and we'll get the link put in the description. It is, I believe it is open access.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for calling in, Jason. And if you come across other questions or you read through the paper and you have more answers, definitely go to maybe Viced Rhino's website as opposed to Talk Heathen, because I would love to talk with you more, but I'm pretty sure you'll get better answers out of him.
Okay. Thanks, you guys. Have a good day.
You too. Bye. And that's one thing that I want to make sure that, like, as an atheist and a skeptic online, I don't know anything by any stretch of the imagination, right? And the ability to say, hey, I am not the best person to talk about this subject with. Here's somebody who can answer that question a little bit better, or has that experience or that passion that led them to research this, is something that we all need to normalize, right? The idea of, oh, I'm not the best person to talk about this. Here's somebody with more information. And for me, that certainly is anything around the concepts of biology or geology.